Okay, we are going to call this meeting to order. This is the City of Buckeye Council meeting for Tuesday, June 18, 2024. We're going to start this morning with an invocation led by Pastor Teddy Burton from the Citadel of Praise Christian Church, followed by the pledge led by Vice Mayor Goodman.
Mayor, Council, it's an honor to lead this prayer. Citizens of Buckeye, will you pray with me, please? Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today as humbly as we know how. We gather together today for this meeting and this agenda. We pray for your guidance, your wisdom, and your discernment as important decisions are made and that they will impact our city and its residents. Grant each council member the ability to listen attentively, speak with clarity, and act with integrity. May their discussions be constructive and productive, leading to positive outcomes for our community. We pray for the unity among all council members, that they may work together for the common good and what is best for our citizens. Bless this city with peace, prosperity, and justice. May this council meeting be a time of fruitful collaboration and meaningful progress as we ask for your presence and your guidance in all matters discussed today. In your mighty and majestic and holy name, amen. Join me in the pledge. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we, thank you both. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Yonker.
Here.
Councilmember Hegestad is absent. Councilmember Hess.
Present.
Councilmember Guy.
Present.
Councilmember Hustis. Vice Mayor Goodman.
Present.
Mayor Orsborn.
Present. Thank you very much. Item number 2 on the agenda is comments from the public. Members of the audience may comment on any non-agenda item of interest. And I think all the speaker request cards I have are for a specific agenda item. Am I missing any speaker request cards for general?
No, Mayor.
Okay. We'll go on to item number 2. Item number 3, awards, presentations, and proclamations. Tonight we have none. Item number 4 is consent agenda items and new business. Approval of the items on the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine matters and be enacted by one motion and vote of the City Council. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests. This section may include the approval of minutes from previous meetings. Council, for the consent agenda, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to pull item 4F, if I could, please.
4F. Okay. You have questions? Questions on?
Who's on that one?
Uh,
Closing down of 6th Street. It's actually probably more towards Ken because it's part of DSAP, correct? So my question is, I want to just put it on record, closing down the street and making it, what's the public benefit of closing down 6th Street right here in front of?
Your Mayor, Councilor Yonker, I can speak to that, item 4F. One of the things we've done in conjunction with what's happening on Monroe today was consider whether it was the right time to do a plaza, as we call it, a plaza on 6th Street, and that includes installing removable bollards. So one of the items for discussion maybe with leadership is how often are those bollards in place? Is it closed more often than it's open? So it's certainly going to be flexible, but we had the opportunity while we were doing some construction to create that. Not only will it create opportunities for when we have events downtown to have a gathering place or a central location to administrate the event from, it also creates a safer pedestrian path for visitors to City Hall, staff to City Hall. and anyone visiting or conducting business in the city.
How does it affect Dollar General and their parking there on the west side of the building? Is that their private property or is that public right away?
So, and you can probably see the head shaking next to me. That is within the right-of-way, that parking that's adjacent to Dollar General on the east side of the street.
Okay. And we've had reach out to them to discuss that this is what's going to happen moving forward?
I can't speak to whether they're aware of that, but the parking will still be accessible for use by the general public and by customers at Dollar General. Also, there will still be an entrance into the main parking lot off of 6th Street. Turned around here, but the main parking lot will still have an access where there used to be a payment drop-off box near that tree, the large shade tree. There'll still be access into that lot.
Okay.
The alley will still be accessible for deliveries and for passenger traffic.
Okay. Thank you. That answered my question. I appreciate it.
So just to clarify, we're not pulling that off of the consent agenda. You just had questions on that one. Yeah, okay. Okay, council, then on the consent agenda, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve consent agenda items 4A as in Adam through 4T as in Tom.
Second.
Have a motion for approval for the consent agenda and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 And opposed? And the consent agenda passes unanimous. On to item 5, public hearings, non-consent and new business. Item 5A, council to take action on funding 2 economic development catalyst program applicants for the combined amount of $53,000 plus certain fees eligible for reimbursement. And Ms. Tennille Hiller, you are up.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you. I'm Tennille Hiller, the Economic Development Program Manager, and I will be presenting the Catalyst Program this evening. We are in our 10th year of the program, and this is the second round this fiscal year. The program is designed to promote the exterior rehabilitation of existing commercial properties while serving a public purpose. The Catalyst program offers grants up to $50,000 for eligible improvements, and each project must provide a match of 25 to 50%. So far, the return of investment for qualifying projects is up to $949,000 plus. That is also $1.7 million in private investment into the community. This is resulting in more than $2.6 million in total investment. The ROI is 2 to 1. So for every $1 the city invests in the program, we are receiving about $2 in return investment into the community. This list is just about 4 years old. It is 5 years old, excuse me. It does list normally all the way back to 2014, but because we have so many projects at this point, we have condensed the list to just the last 5 years. Here is a map showing the 51 completed projects over the last 10 years. You can see there are also some that go below the map that we are unable to show on the map because they go too far south. Project updates since December of 2023. We do have some completed projects. We have the Evangelica Christian Church has completed theirs. Argento Pizza has completed theirs, and just recently, Diana's Buildings has completed their first project of 2. We do have some ongoing projects. They were approved in fiscal year 23 and 24. We have the second project for the Diana's Buildings, which are facade improvements, La Pasitas facade improvements, Southwest Chiromed, and Parker Fastener. For the second round of applicants, we issued an RFP in February, and we received 2 qualifying responses. The evaluation panel has recommended both projects move forward. one in the amount of $50,000 and the second one in the amount of $3,000. The first proposal is for HFFV Investments. They have 7 suites. They will be doing new storefronts, doors, windows, and trim. Their financial request is $50,000. They will be contributing up to $60,000 for a total of $110,000 for approximate project. The second proposal is the Flat Tortilla Building. They will be repairing the stucco and repainting the building. Their financial request is $3,000. Their contribution will be $1,000 for a total project amount of $4,000. Staff does recommend the approval of these 2 projects for a total of $53,000. This coming August, we anticipate going out for another round of requests for proposals. Any questions?
Questions from council? Not seeing any questions. Councilmember Guy or Councilmember Hagestad?
No questions.
Okay. Item 5A, council, what is your pleasure?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve agenda item 5A as an atom.
Second.
I have a motion for approval and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 And opposed? And 5A passes unanimous. Thank you very much. Great job, Tennille.
Thank you.
Item 5B, council to hold a public hearing and take action on ordinance number 06-24, approving an amendment to the Copper Falls Community Master Plan as described in case number PLZZ-22-00025, approving the second amended development agreement between the City of Buckeye, Arizona and GM Gabrich Family LP. Let's see, this is concerning the development of northmost approximately 72.3 acres of the Copper Falls Community Master Plan and authorizing mayor to execute and deliver the development agreement. Mr. Ken Galika, you are presenting.
Mr. Mayor, before Ken moves forward, I need to declare a conflict in this item.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members. Good to be before you again this evening. As the mayor mentioned, it's a 2-part item, but still only requiring 1 action at the conclusion of the public hearing this evening. So major community master plan amendment and development agreement pertaining to Copper Falls 3, what we're calling Copper Falls 3. You can see the subject property outlined on these 3 map exhibits. Starting on your left, it is approximately 72 acres, just a little over 72 acres at the north end of the Copper Falls Community Master Plan. The overall Community Master Plan is about 276 acres. So this represents about a quarter of the overall CMP area. The property is currently undeveloped, used for agricultural purposes, as is most of the property that abuts the site to the west, as well as east across Miller Road, though that is planned for future commercial development. Construction has not started yet. To the north of this site is the acre lot Northwood Park Estates rural residential subdivision. And you can kind of see a notch out of the subject property, highlight with my mouse right here. There is one homestead that is included within the Copper Falls CMP boundary, but not included within this amendment area. So the proposal that I'll describe tonight does attempt to address that parcel and relate to it from a compatibility standpoint. Shifting to the zoning map in the middle of your screen, you can see the yellow color that's applied to this parcel is the planned community zoning. That's the zoning that's applied to all CMPs that were approved prior to 2010. That's basically just an underlying zone that allowed the CMP to establish development requirements, permitted uses, and development standards. Surrounding properties, with the exception of Northwood Park Estates to the north, which is zoned for rural residential, are all zoned planned residential for more typical suburban residential use. There is the corner, actually both corners at the northwest, northeast, and southeast corners of Miller Road and Broadway Road do have commercial zoning on those. The general plan matches what I just kind of described in the zoning. This is zoned, this is designated as master plan community. The surrounding properties outside of Copper Falls are all designated neighborhood, which allows for a range of residential uses, as well as some limited commercial uses. The best way, in my opinion, to look at what's being proposed tonight is to compare what's the current entitlement for the property and look at what's proposed tonight. So on the left-hand side of your screen is the existing Copper Falls CMP land plan, specifically cropped for this 72-ish acre property. You can see the two kind of orange parcels labeled 6 and 7. Those are dedicated to single-family residential at a density of 2 to 3 dwelling units per acre, which would equal a maximum of about 160 homes. Also reserves 21 acres of commercial, which would be an equivalent of C2 zoning, and then 5 acres of office tucked at the southeast corner of the property adjacent to Miller Road. The map on the right side of your screen is the proposed community master plan amendment. You can see it does maintain the same general circulation with the collector street that kind of snakes through the property, connecting Broadway Road south through the planned single-family residential portions of Copper Falls. It does change the uses for the majority of the property. It would revise the permitted uses to accommodate up to 23.2 acres of single-story multifamily residential. So that's your bungalow style or your build-to-rent type of product with a density of up to 10 dwelling units per acre, which would be reduced by 3 acres to just over 20 if the city takes the option on a fire station site on the property. That's located in parcel 6 and parcel 7. So the single-story product is north, up against up against Broadway Road, where it would transition to the rural residential to the north, as well as the homestead. There is 2-story multifamily proposed. That's the parcel 8 in the southwest corner, lower left-hand corner of the project. That would allow up to 277 units, limited to 2 stories in height. And then parcel 9, which is the darkest of the parcels here, that would allow the 3-story product, the most dense product that's proposed here, with a density of up to 25 dwelling units per acre. That would be 3-story multifamily product. So, and then I should note, commercial is maintained, very similar to the existing approval on about 16 and a half acres. That would also be based on C2, though using the PAD, or the CMP process, we are able to eliminate some more objectionable uses, like thrift stores would not be permitted, and the number of drive-throughs would be limited. As part of revising the use mix on this property, this will establish development requirements, development standards for multifamily, because that was never the original kind of vision for the property. So the CMP didn't establish standards for multifamily development. They are based on our city's MF2 zoning district, except we do cap densities, whereas the MF2 would allow much more density than what is proposed here. The building heights as well, and number of stories is capped. Maximum lot coverage is reduced from what the zoning ordinance would typically allow, and we have increased, landscape buffering to single-family residences, including the homestead parcel, where a 110-foot buffer would be provided around that house. The landscape setback adjacent to Broadway for the residential would also be increased by about 5 feet from what our typical requirement is, and I'll show you how that impacts separation in just a minute. Overall, you can kind of see the schematic that I put on the screen. Density shifts, density and building height shift from north to south. That's intended to go from lower to higher to really create a better transition to the existing Northwood Park Estates. Commercial, as I mentioned, I don't think I'm gonna spend too much time on this slide, but it would limit the number of drive-throughs to a maximum of 4. We hear from our residents, they're kind of tired of too much fast food, so we wanna try to get away from all drive-through type of shopping centers. Thrift stores and dollar stores would be prohibited. And then some of the landscape and separation, landscape buffer standards would be modified, mainly because there are existing setbacks planned within the Copper Falls community, like a easement to the south that would provide further separation beyond what these setbacks and separations would require. The development agreement is required based on the development code that was in effect at the time that the applicant submitted, as well as prior agreements. The most significant components of this particular development agreement, it outlines the dedication, design, and construction obligations related to the developer's construction of Miller Road and Broadway adjacent to this site, which they will, of course, like all development, be responsible for doing their half-street improvements adjacent to the subject property, as well as I mentioned briefly the dedication of a 3-acre fire station site at the northwest corner of the property. With regard to utilities, the property is located within the city's water and wastewater service areas. This is just the zoning stage, but when we get further along, the project would be required to add wet water to our city system. So that's something our water resources department would work with them on, identifying a source of water that they would basically add to our system that would then be treated at our planned facilities. The existing adjacent sewer facilities may or may not be sufficient. The developer would certainly be responsible for upgrading those if needed to serve this particular development. So I mentioned the general plan designation of this site is neighborhood, which if you read the definition of neighborhood, it talks about a range of residential opportunities. So that allows for single family as well as multifamily residential. Also talks about supporting commercial types of uses. This map on the screen here is just provided to show the planned employment activity that we see in the city, just to show that there's going to be a lot of employees coming to Buckeye, and they're most likely going to need a place to live. They probably don't currently live within our city boundaries. So these types of projects with multifamily are certainly an important way to address that housing demand. This would, in staff's belief, diversify our housing portfolio. It will attract residents with different housing preferences. Not everybody necessarily wants to live in a single family house. Some people prefer an easier kind of lock and leave lifestyle, which this type of product would certainly give them. It preserves the commercial corner, about 16.5 acres. So we can develop the majority of that intersection with the Fry's across the street as a major commercial node in the future that would serve the residents in the area. Standard modifications proposed within the CMP are all intended to enhance compatibility between the multifamily and the existing and planned single family in the area. And of course, the fire station site, if the city decides to move forward with that, would certainly improve response times for emergency services in the area. The CMP does define architectural requirements as well, so it's not just talking about use and development standards, but saying it's going to try to complement the existing character in the area using a kind of semi-rural, modern agrarian type of architecture. Might be similar to something you would see in a Verado from a quality standpoint. Access and open space requirements that are proposed within this are unchanged, so they would meet our typical code requirements, and there are no outstanding issues for any of our reviewing departments. Just to walk you through a density kind of analysis, this is based on the existing entitlements as they exist today, not including this particular proposal. Based on that single family vision from 15 years ago, Copper Falls would develop at 2.2 acres per, 2.2 units per acre. On this particular 72 acres, about almost three units per acre within the overall CMP. And within that square mile, surrounded by Broadway, Miller, Southern, and Rooks, you'd have a density about 2.7. I forgot I had these fancy colors. With the proposal, the density of the subject parcel would increase up to 879 homes. So 700 some additional homes would be permitted on this particular 72 acres, which would increase the density on that 72 acres pretty significantly, up to 12 units per acre. Within the overall CMP, it would increase it up to 5.5 units per acre. There is a separate unrelated request for potentially additional multifamily at the southeast corner of this property. If that was also approved, you see it would bring the density up to a little over 7 units per acre. And then within the square mile, you'd be talking a density of 4.6 units per acre. Just to put you in a frame of reference, 4.6 is what industry would classify as kind of medium density residential. It's certainly more density than something like Northwood Park Estates, but it is a density very consistent with suburban development patterns throughout the Phoenix Valley. This is just a slide I can go back to, but showing some of the various multifamily projects that are in different statuses throughout the Miller Road corridor. That's where we're seeing a lot of the multifamily activity, just in demand to or proximity to various employment uses that are proposed. You see this project, Copper Falls North. There was a Nirvana project that had zoning approved to the northeast. They still have not gotten the site plan approved for that. Some of these other projects are in more conceptual stages of development at this point. You might be curious with regard to separation of homes within this proposed development to the existing and planned single family in the area. So starting with Northwood Park Estates, there would be a minimum of 300 feet, 310 feet, all the way up to 430 feet, just lot dependent based on where those existing homes are located on their lots, from the single story homes that would be built as part of Copper Falls 3 to the nearest wall of the homes on the north side of Broadway Road, I should say. That includes a lot of right-of-ways as well as landscape setback and existing yards. From the homestead property, there would be 160 feet from the nearest potential building wall of one of the one-story apartments within Copper Falls to the closest building wall of the homestead. And that would consist of a 110-foot landscape buffer. Within that, the first 55 feet, so beyond the homestead property, the first 55 feet would have to be just landscape, preserved for passive kind of landscape use. And then the second 55 feet could be something like a trail, something more active in terms of an amenity, but it would not include any sort of structures or residences. And then even though they're not existing yet, if you were curious, if you bought a lot in Copper Falls to the south, how close will these apartments be to my home? You're talking about a minimum of 85 feet in that location. There's been a lot of public participation in this process going all the way back to February of last year when the neighborhood meeting was held. There's been written correspondence that staff has received from 9 now, with one additional this morning, so that made it, changed it from 8 to 9 citizens that have been notably opposed to this project for various reasons, traffic and crime, and just kind of not wanting to see so much growth within the city of Buckeye. There have been additional meetings between the developer and the HOA and a lot of the residents in Northwood Park Estates that took place outside of the required public process. The last that I'm aware of happened on December 10th, where there was some discussions about providing a wall to additionally help screen and buffer the residences to the north. Developer has agreed to do that. Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval of this item back in December. There were 11 speakers during that public hearing. Believe most, if not all of them, were opposed to the project. There was a protest filed by representatives of the homestead owner, as well as from 4 Northwood Park Estate owners. So that's been received, and all required notices have been completed. That includes the applicant providing additional notice of this meeting tonight. That wasn't required because the item has been continued, date certain several times, but just to make sure that it was a fair above board process, they did reach out back through mail, as well as updating the signs on the property. Somewhat late in the process, we continue to have evolving discussions, and there have been 2 recommended stipulations to address the concerns that Miller Road is becoming overloaded. We know that the developers are responsible for doing their own half-street improvements adjacent to their site, but there's concern that that's not enough in this case. How is the traffic going to get to the site, particularly from I-10? So to address that, there have been 2 stipulations added. I'm not going to read through maybe word for word. I'll just leave it here on the screen so you can read, and then I'll move on to the next one. This is probably the more important of the 2. This would require the developer, based on per unit of residential and per square foot of commercial that is built on the property, to contribute a pro rata share that would be used by the city to build Miller Road improvements beyond the extent of the project boundaries. So to fill in some of those gaps that currently exist in the system. And this would, basically kind of function as a, don't hurt me, I'm not going to say it, so never mind. So it would be a fee that the city could use to basically address the issues that we heard from the residents throughout the process. Thank you for listening to my long presentation. We do recommend, staff recommends that we conduct a public hearing this evening and approve the item subject to conditions A through J as listed in your staff reports, plus these 2 additional conditions that are presented this evening. I'm available for questions, Mayor. Kurt Jones with Tiffany and Bosco, or Bill Lally, I'm not sure who wants to come up, is also preparing a presentation for you this evening, but I'm happy to take your questions.
Okay, maybe what would be appropriate is to jump into your presentation, and then we'll go to public comment and then comments from council. Unless, at this point, are there any comments from Ken on what's been presented? I do have just one, Ken, that STIP KK, kilo, that, the parcel numbers, can you just explain that a little bit? It was sort of hard to read and understand exactly what was being stipulated there without having reference to the parcel numbers.
Yeah, so
It'd be the one before this.
Oh, this one.
Yeah.
This is requiring dedication of right-of-way north of Broadway Road from property. Also just happens to be owned by the same ownership. It's not part of this project.
Okay.
So it was just a good opportunity to, from the same owner to get that right-of-way rather than the city having to purchase that.
So up, I believe north of the canal, we're talking on the east side of the road.
Correct.
Between the canal and Durango. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. That's the only question I had. Mr. Jones.
Mayor, members of the City Council, Kurt Jones with Tiffany and Bosco. We're at 25 East Camelback Road in Phoenix, 85016. Here with Bill Lally from Tiffany and Bosco and our clients from IndyCap, Mike Ternine and Todd Ostransky. We do have a graphic, Mayor, of... Forward?
Yep.
There we go. We do have a graphic that shows those two properties that are on that stipulation. We'll get to it in this presentation. As Ken described, Copper Falls is sort of right in the middle of things. It's in the middle of all the single-family development that's occurring in this area of the city. There's employment basically surrounding it, from the downtown north up to the I-10 to the SR-85 corridor that the city redesignated for industrial, and the employment corridors to the east along Broadway and Southern. As Ken mentioned, we are mending just the north half of the CMP, which is the 73 acres, excluding the lot that is on the south side of Broadway. I'm not going to go through all of these points, but wanted to start by saying we started this process over 2 years ago, and we first met with the councilman who does live in that one lot on the south side of Broadway to kind of discuss what land uses would be acceptable, and started the process from that point on. We didn't just submit a case and then hope that we hit it right the first time. And so what I want to do is kind of just go through how we got to where we're at today and how the planning started. This is a plan that was actually a Sharpie plan that was devised between our clients and the homestead owners on sort of how they'd like to see the plan unfold. And just to briefly describe it, it shows a green belt for some buffer along the north side of the property for the Northwood Park Estates subdivision. It shows a large buffer around that single-family home. It proposes more of a skinnier retail along the intersection of Broadway and Miller. It proposes a duplex or a BFR, which I'm assuming is built for rent type product around the homestead, and more multifamily in the southern part. And as you can see, and Ken mentioned the police or the fire station dedication, we were already thinking at that time, before we even submitted, of some sort of public facility dedication as part of this project. From there, we created this plan. This is more of a bubble plan that we created. We ended up submitting a similar version of it, which is this plan. So that was for the 6 months from the initial meeting with the councilman to November of 2022. We submitted the end of November of 2022, an actual submittal. We went through the first review process. January came of 2023. We then advertised for an open house, which we held at the school just south of here. In February of 2023, and that's when Councilman showed up and was not in favor of our plan. And there were about 12 folks that showed up from Northwood Park Estates that were not in favor of the plan either. From there, we basically, that's now February of 2023, we basically met with other stakeholders. We went through another review with staff. So the plan on the top of the screen was the previous plan. The plan below it was sort of what we heard from stakeholders to get to the next iteration of our plan. The blue on the upper plan was a density of 16 dwelling units to the acre. There were really minimal standards that restricted the multifamily. The brown on that plan was 30 dwelling units to the acre, both parcels 8 and 9. And the heights were allowed to be higher in those parcels 8 and 9. And again, they showed our skinnier commercial. We heard that the city wanted a bigger commercial component at this corner, something that a major user could locate on. So we added more girth to our 11.5 acres and made it about 16.5 acres. We better defined in the yellow what the densities were. We lowered it to 15 dwelling units to the acre in the yellow. We created the buffer distances around the homestead lot of 110 feet. We created distances for buffers around the entire project. And then we clarified the parcel in the southwest corner. Again, it had greater heights. We lowered it to a 2-story element at 15 dwelling units to the acre. And we kept that parcel 9 at a multi-story, multifamily at 30 dwelling units to the acre. That took us through the summer. I think Councilwoman Hess introduced us to the HOA president, Mr. Mike Durs. I'm going to call him Mike during this presentation because I don't have a correct spelling of his last name. But we had several meetings at City Hall with him. He brought a couple of the Northwood Park Estates residents. We talked about the project. there we kind of ascertained what their real issues were. They, at that time, spoken about a wall. Density obviously was too high. Traffic was a big issue, roadway improvements, and then traffic in and out of their development was a major issue. That took us into the fall of 2023 with this plan where we got contacted by staff, and that public facility element sort of arose. We had a meeting with staff and a virtual meeting with the fire chief that they wanted acreage for a fire station in this area. We had first put it in this dashed area just west of the commercial between the Homestead lot, because we thought maybe that's a nice major access point to get out onto Broadway to then go wherever they go to on their calls. That has changed, as you can see from the final plan. But with this one, we also brought this graphic to our Northwood Park Estates HOA meeting at the first week of December of 2023, just before the Planning and Zoning Commission. At that meeting, we heard about density and the wall. We had a really good meeting. I mean, it was two opposing sides. We weren't agreeing with each other, but I want to give a shout out to that whole community. They were very respectful. It was cordial. They told us what their thoughts were. Even at that meeting, our client started talking about lowering density and addressing some of their concerns with the wall. And so from there, we went to the Planning and Zoning Commission, second week of December. With this plan, it shows where the city ended up wanting the fire station site. We lowered the density in that yellow parcel 6 and 7 from 15 down to 10, as we stated in the HOA meeting. We kept the distances for the buffers, and we actually lowered parcel 9's density, which is which was our highest density parcel, down to 25 dwelling units the acre. And we actually added a stipulation on height with that one. That was a multi-story, allowed for about 4 stories, and we stipulated ourselves back down to 3 stories. So the evolution of this site plan went from sort of a loosey-goosey multifamily proposal with minimal commercial to a more defined commercial component that the city can use for the residents and city services and goods. And then sort of stepped, as Ken described, stepped our densities and heights away from the folks that are really impacted by that, and that's the Homestead lot and the Northwood Park Estates subdivision. We were working off of this proclamation that was done around 2 months before we submitted, which was in September of 2022, about needing additional types of housing in the community. And we feel that this location on 2 major arterials, it's sort of the main and main of the city of Buckeye, that this is an appropriate place for putting this type of density in the city to address this proclamation. And then, as Ken mentioned, we late in the process, we brought this case into the spring, and we were trying to get signatures on our development agreements. This Miller Road study came up with regards to traffic. Staff presented to us in a virtual meeting sort of their calculations on how things need to get fixed in some components and segments of the roadways. They sent us this sort of graphic on how they would calculate the impact fees. This was about 2 weeks ago. This is some math that I did based off of those fees. This is now old math because we received last night an updated version of this. And it's sort of, and this is what Ken put on the screen, but it increased the fees. That previous graphic was, the discussion we had with staff was at segment 2, which is lower Buckeye to Broadway. There was sort of this pinch point of traffic. You have the folks south of us, Pulte, building the rest of Broadway. We will build our section of Broadway, of Miller. We'll build our section of Miller. We'll build Broadway. But you have this sort of section where no development's going on south of the city's CIP project, which is closer to the freeway. And so they started thinking that we should be involved with the entire costs all the way down to baseline. And so that's what these costs are. And so that increased all of our costs for our units. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, our residential alone is 1.8 million of impact fees. That's, again, if we build out the densities we're allowed. Typically, the densities you're allowed, you don't actually get to those, but if we were somehow achieve those, that's the cost. If you include the commercial, it's another $2 million of impact fees at a 25% coverage for your standard commercial, suburban commercial development site. So we feel that we should participate in the residential. We are changing our residential density significantly. We already had 20 plus acres of commercial, and we're only providing 16.5. We feel that the commercial one puts us at a little bit of a disadvantage since directly across the street, we have the Fry's Center. Anybody looking to locate commercial in the city is probably going to go try to find a spot that doesn't have these types of fees that are added to the cost of developing. Mayor, to get to your question, these are the two parcels in question in that stipulation. We thought after these discussions with staff in regards to this impact fee issue that we could also help the city because there's this segment between Lower Buckeye and Broadway that needs some work, and if the city were going to hop on a CIP to use some of these impact fees, well, they need the right-of-way. And so our client who's dealing with the owner of this property, we got them to sign a letter to commit to doing this. If approved, they'll dedicate this right-of-way within a certain time period. I think the latest is like January of next year, that they'll dedicate this so that if something does happen where some temporary lanes could be done to help traffic in this area, that road right-of-way will be dedicated as part of this. So we went a little bit above and beyond just paying the impact fee as part of the sort of fix of the Miller Road problem. As to notice, real quickly, this is a notice at 1,000 feet. I think the requirements are at 500 feet. For the neighborhood open house back in January of 2023, we notified all of the lots in Northwood Park Estates, so everyone got a letter of the open house. But as to the required notice for hearings and so forth, we went 1,000 feet, and that's with the lots that it hits, and that's just an aerial of the lots that it hits. And then finally, again, back to the sort of the cordial and respectful nature of this Northwood Park Estates and the folks that we dealt with, Mike sent us a requirement of how he wanted the wall built for the south side of their subdivision. Our stip right now just kind of reads we have to build this wall, and we are just going to put on record we'll build it to the requirements of his bullet points, which is this email and sort of his requirements. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Respectfully hope you approve our case tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones. Any questions before we go to public hearing? No, I'll ask again after. Okay, thank you. So we will go, now open a public hearing, and I've got comment request, speaker request cards. I think I can say that. That's it. We are open in a public hearing. So the first speaker request card is Susie Newland. Please coming up. You have 3 minutes, and the lights will indicate when you can close to the end.
Hi, I'm Susie Newland. Address is 25401 West Riverside Street, Buckeye, Arizona. I'm in Northwood Park. I have a couple of concerns. Some of them were already addressed. The traffic is a nightmare, as you know. The canal situation on Miller Road, whether the developer will also increase or fix the road, or expand the lanes, I should say, going westbound on Broadway, because if they're going eastbound, they gotta come home and go westbound. And most of these developed places only improve their side and not our side. I'm concerned with the traffic on Broadway and Miller Road. Broadway was a mess, I think, last week with the freeway. Miller Road, the traffic is backed up from the stoplight at Miller and Broadway all the way to the stoplight at West Park, right by the canal. During traffic hours, it's car to car from one stoplight to the other. It's impossible for us to get out of Miller, out into Miller Road and make a left unless we go to the stoplight. The traffic is hard to get to MC 85. Of course, the water shortages, more people, more water use. I'm concerned as to what the light pollution is going to be like once they have these 2- and 3-story buildings. We do have 2-story houses, I know, but now we're talking about 3-story houses. The noise pollution of all of these vehicles going back and forth, if we have drive-throughs there in that area too. I haven't been to one drive-through area that's quiet. Crime, it's just unbelievable what's going on in our neighborhood. Last week, there was 2 different nights where there was a vehicle parked on the east side of the street that I live on. There's a vacant lot, 11 o'clock at night, there's a driver in the vehicle, there's a man walking around the neighborhood, I'm by myself. One of my neighbors came out to ask him what he was doing. That happened 2 nights in a row. Cars are being broken into. They've broken into my vehicle. We've had times where people cover up their license plate and they're flying drones around the backyards to see what they can see. I have one big concern, and it has to do with why is a developer and the city spending 2 years and putting this stuff together, all this time, all of this money, and the community, the residents are not invited from the very beginning. I get the impression that money has been spent by the developer and the city, and I'm supposed to believe that city council is really going to listen to us when all of this money has already been invested by the developer? And my time's up, so I'll go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Newland. Second speaker is Melissa Hamilton.
So my name is Melissa Hamilton. I live 2 streets behind City Hall. They want to fix the roads from Baseline North. What about all of us that live down here that have to deal with this? How many of you live down here near where all these developments are going in and deal with this day in, day out? They want to put 25 families per acre. Where are these kids going to go to school? Our schools are already at capacity. We can't get teachers. We can't get firefighters. We can't get police. Our police department and fire department is already stretched thin. So let's add 25 more families per acre and put our police at even more of a disadvantage. Why is this city working so hard to put families on top of families on top of families before worrying about who's going to protect them? Where's the water coming from? Where are these teachers coming from? Where's our police and fire? You want to put another fire station, that's great. Why not fix the one that's 2.5 miles away already? Half of our city is divided and you guys don't even see it. You have marketplaces coming in that are for the city of Buckeye, but we're calling them Verado Marketplace. That's funny. I thought we all lived in Buckeye. You guys are putting in all this stuff and not looking at what your citizens are telling you. I come to City Hall meetings, the chief of police and some of the lieutenants, and Mr. Mayor, I've talked to you. You ask our opinion, we tell you. You do all these things with these developers, we tell them we don't want certain things. You guys made MC-85 right here on Monroe 2 lanes before. Then you decided, oh, guess what, we messed up, it didn't work. Let's go back to 4 lanes. So let's waste more millions of dollars going back to what we already know doesn't work. What over half of these businesses and families and residents don't want. We only live here and pay all you guys' salaries and all the taxes to make the city run, but then our opinions don't matter. When are you guys gonna listen? You have all these developments going in and telling them, well, you can't do certain green spaces. You have to plant more plants that are water and drought tolerant. They don't. And then they have the right to tell residents, oh, your tree died because you're not watering it enough, but you have to have 7 or 9 plants and trees in your front yard. Let's waste more water. My son goes to school. He's not even in one of the public schools around here because they're so overcrowded, they can't handle the kids they have. We had to redo bus routes, so kids are now walking over a mile to get to school. Not to mention, we now have a methadone clinic right in downtown Buckeye where little kids walk by to go to the elementary school and the preschool a block away. Who wants to walk around downtown Buckeye with homeless people peeing everywhere and sleeping on our sidewalk?
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Ms. Pamela Hamilton.
I am Pamela Hamilton. I live in Parkside. And I think we've already had a discussion today. I'm not even worried about the traffic as much as I am the crime. I can't even put a statue in my front yard without it being stolen. You can't have anything in your front yard without it being stolen. And now the little buggers are starting to come over walls. I mean, we can't handle the crime we have now in Buckeye without adding 3- and 4-story apartments to add more crime. We got the ones behind the post office that should be finished soon and people are gonna be moving into. We don't need any more apartments to bring more crime to this city. I mean, I moved here from Mesa to get away from it, and now it's coming. Where are we going next? Tonopah so it can follow us? Buckeye was a nice little community, and it's being destroyed. And you people are allowing it. I mean, I don't know what else to say. If you guys don't want to listen to the people that vote for you, I guess we need to vote for somebody else.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Next speaker request card is Derek Newman.
Good evening, Council. Really good presentations, both by the city and by the developers' representation. They've done a lot of work. A lot of what they said is true, and I think they've got a great product. I think they're doing a really good job creating a good portfolio. The math works. It's really good. I would present it to just about anybody I work with. The problem is, my kids don't care about the numbers or the portfolios. Yesterday, I was outside and one of my neighbors was training his horse, and as he went by, my kids could hear it, so they run out. And I don't want him to get too close because this one's a little bit, you know, he's a little bit antsy. So we stay up on the driveway. And then he comes over and they're able to get close enough to touch him. I don't know how long that's gonna last. I would hope that it lasts at least another 10 to 15 years because my 2-year-old's not gonna remember that. I want her to remember that lifestyle. Love the portfolios and the numbers. They work. But this is where we live. We work somewhere else. I know there's a lot of jobs coming in and I appreciate all the work that you're doing. But I did research when I bought my home, and I'm from the West Valley. I'm a native in Arizona. I love watching the growth. But when I look at a master plan and it says neighborhoods, I mean, be honest with yourselves. If you're a native in the West Valley of Arizona and you see a master plan that says neighborhood, is product what you think of raising your family in? I don't think it is. And I think most of your constituents would agree. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Up next is, I think we're just calling you Mike tonight? Is it Dirks?
Dirks, yes, sir.
Dirks, okay. I have 2 request cards.
You have 2 for me?
Yeah.
Can I talk for 6 minutes?
No, no.
They got 2. All right, guys, so you know who I am. I'm Mike Dirch. I live in Northwood Park Estates. I have a little, I don't know if the term is correct, a vicarious situation here. So I'm speaking for the residents of Northwood Park Estates because I was asked to do that for my HOA. But I'm also speaking for myself. So the opinions don't vary too much. I just have a couple little quick statements. So I think the first and foremost, one of the things that was brought to me really hit home was, let's quit lying to ourselves. None of the businesses that are being brought into this area are gonna support living in these neighborhoods that they're developing right there. Nobody that works at a Fry's or works at a Jack in the Box or works at any of these businesses going in that corner is gonna be able to afford the $2K plus a month rent. So that's not true. Okay, another thing that was brought to me was the people presenting, the developers presenting, keep saying that they have all the signatures and things like that. That was brought to the city several times, and that wasn't true. I have yet to meet one of the people that live along Broadway, and I talk to them all on a regular basis, that say, yes, we want this. The majority of the neighborhood says no. There is a couple that say yes, but the majority, by and far, is no. This wouldn't be allowed in Verrado. We've mentioned Verrado a couple times tonight, so we should probably stop doing that, because this would not be allowed in Verrado by you guys or anybody else. Nobody lives in Verrado. We all know that the money talks. So the people that are in Verrado would influence that, and that this wouldn't happen. Let's see, there was a comment that there was a buy-off to the city. I don't like that terminology. I believe that the city was given some property to put in a fire station. The city has already stated in several meetings previous, and in the last meeting that we had in December, that they're not even gonna use it for that. So we should probably stop talking about that if that's not the case as well. We're selling things with fiction, not facts. Assurances of the wall. I appreciate that you guys brought that up tonight and that you guys talked about that. That's really the first time that I've seen that it's really been brought out to everybody. Look, that we are willing to do this if this goes through, just like the fire station and the land that was given as a buffer area for the homestead that's there. The traffic study. I challenged at the last meeting. I was told by city council members that they were going to go out and immediately start working on some things along Broadway and along Miller. I've yet to hear back from any of them. I've sent emails, haven't got anything back from that. I still sit for several minutes, no matter which way I go, to try and get out, and to do it safely is dangerous. I work with the fire department. I worked here at the fire department in Buckeye for a lot of years. Worked a lot of accidents in that intersection, in that area, and it is getting worse, I'm here to tell you. And the water workaround, honestly, guys, I think that, and gals, I think that that kind of shows future developers, hey, the city is willing to work around things if you have enough money and time, and you're willing to keep giving us more. So we ask for more, and if they give us a little bit more, then we'll reach our threshold and we'll go ahead and vote for what they want. I don't think that that's the right precedence to set for the city of Buckeye. Sooner or later, one of these cities and towns is going to have to say no. We could be the first. We could set that trend. Somebody needs to do it, and we're not doing it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mr. Dirks. Okay, maybe just a couple of questions for staff, just for some clarifications. The road work, I think it was Ms. Newland that brought up Broadway and what actually gets built by the developer. Can you speak to the improvements that'll be made by the developer on Broadway?
Yeah, Chair. Tell, I go to Planning and Zoning Commission just as much as before you guys. Mayor, yes, the developer will do their south half improvements, not the north half like the resident mentioned. Typically, that would have been done by the developer of that property. I don't know the history of Northwood Park Estates and why that developer didn't have to do any street improvements, but in hindsight, they probably should have. What do those consist of? Looking for John, but I think 3 lanes in each, the 3 eastbound lanes on the south half there, as well as probably a half a turn lane.
Up over there. Yeah. Mayor, Council, John Willett, City Traffic Engineer. With the completion of the half street improvements on the south side of Broadway, we'll have enough pavement we could provide 2 lanes in each direction. So that would improve the ability, and only be for the section along their frontage. I mean, please be reminded that it has to neck back down to the existing conditions west of their property going towards Brooks. We could provide some additional capacity out there.
Okay. And actually, before you go, Miller Road, what improvements along Miller Road?
So as of right now, we have submitted a request to Public Works to install the southbound right turn lane at Wood off of Miller. I wish I could tell you that's going to happen tomorrow, but this doesn't happen tomorrow. They're getting a contractor lined up to try to put that in. The improvements on Miller would be adding 1 lane in each direction from Broadway up through Lower Buckeye. That's beyond north of the project limits. Along their frontage, they would do their half street. from Broadway south, eventually tie into what Copper Falls did along their half street on the west side. And then Fry's across the street is doing their half street. So at the intersection, we'll have enough room to put two through lanes in each direction. Improve the capacity and operation of that area.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Willett. Water was brought up a couple times, and Mr. Lowe, I'm probably going to ask you to answer these. Can you speak to the interconnects? I think I heard the term water shortage, and then water workaround. I'm not specifically sure about what that is, but just the requirements of any development that comes into the city with respect to water and what is happening specifically on this location.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Similar to any other development, the developer would be required to provide, as Ken mentioned, water for the system. That would come in the form of infrastructure or buying into some existing infrastructure that has capacity to add water for this development. They'd be required or to pay impact fees for infrastructure that may have been put in by others, so that in essence the utility system would be made whole. Wastewater would be the same way. We'd have to look to see what the demands are given the just back of the envelope numbers based on the number of dwelling units mentioned. It's not a sizable amount to the system, but it's still development will have to pay for its impact to the system. And so whether it be through some form of buy-in or through impact fee payments to the city for the expansion of the system to meet these demands.
Okay, and I think we throw around terms like certificates of assured water supply, the 100-year assured water supply, which is basically a function of subdividing land. It's not necessarily single-family homes. In the case of this, I think we're subdividing more than the 5 times that I think is the minimum. You can correct me on that. So what would be the requirement on this piece of property as the laws are with respect to certificates?
Sure. The subdivision number is about 6, and then the lot size of the lots is 36 acres or less. And the fact that it is multifamily or commercial in this case, certificates would not be required. There are parts of Copper Falls that do have certificates. The single family subdivision side of things does. I'm not quite sure if portions of this do or do not, but it looks like we're going in a different facet. So maybe Kurt can answer that question, but right now.
Yeah, I might ask for that, just so we're straight out in the open. The need for a certificate on this particular piece of property, if the subdivision is made as it's shown?
Yeah, Mayor, it goes to the 6 or more. Up to the, looks like it would, because we have that street going north-south through it, we split it up. We could have 5 lots. We create a lot for the fire station, which is in your development agreement and in the stipulation, so I'm not sure why that was said it was not real. If we start doing that, we start getting into those 6 numbers, so we'd have to deal with a certificate at some point. It just depends on the thresholds.
Okay, thank you. You had mentioned the fire station property and is part of the development agreement. And light pollution. Thank you, Mr. Lowe, for the answers.
Mayor, the city has light standards, dark sky requirements for development that would prevent light spillage from these proposed buildings, especially, I know the resident mentioned the 3-story. Those will be located well south of Broadway Road. Will you be able to see, like a coach light on those? Potentially, but it's not going to be a glare issue. It's not going to create visible light impacts on anybody's property. Honestly, probably the bigger concern would be street lighting. And, I think as the roads are developed, street lighting is typically much more intensive than any commercial grade lighting. So if there's lighting impacts, it'll probably be from those street improvements.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Galika. Okay, we have no other speaker request cards, correct?
No additional speaker requests.
Very good. So I will close the public hearing, and then we'll go to council for questions. Any questions or comments from council members?
Yes.
Councilman Eustis.
I believe this would be yours, sir. The property that's going to go to the city that's up along the canal, you know what I'm talking about, the part there that you said was
Yes.
going to be. Is that something is part of this agreement, or is this something extra? How does that play a part in this whole situation?
Mayor, Councilman Eustis, that's a great question. I think when this issue of the Miller Road traffic analysis came up and the city kind of approached us, since we're the first ones in the door, they started talking about impact fees. And they started talking about, what's the issue? And we started talking about the road in segments. Thank you, Ken. On this graphic, Councilman, these two parcels are separate from our case. If you can see at the bottom left of this graphic, it says Copper Falls. That's where our case is. So this is outside of our sort of spectrum of fixes, but we wanted to see what we could do in addition to assisting the city with impact fees. And so the owner of the Copper Falls parcel that we're talking about tonight also is the owner of these two parcels. And they felt that in order to help the city, if they were going to advance a CIP project to fix this pinch point between Lower Buckeye and Broadway, since it seems like we're building our south of Broadway, the city has a CIP project north of Lower Buckeye. If they were to accelerate something, we felt that we could help by dedicating that right-of-way so that you wouldn't have to go do a taking or approach those folks. So we worked with that property owner to say, hey, that was already entitled, it's just not being developed, so it's not dedicated. So we went the extra effort, Councilman, and we thought this would help our situation. It actually, I hope it helps with regards to any motion of approval tonight that maybe takes that commercial out of the impact fee component, because I think that this helps really, that solves the problem by giving additional right-of-way for when you need to fix the street for this area.
So we're not getting the entire blocks of property, we're just getting the right-of-way. Is that correct?
We're just getting the right-of-way. There's some roadway dedicated already south of Lower Buckeye on the east side of the street. You can kind of see it on the graphic where the yellow line kind of pinches back in. So yeah, it's a part of the problem. It's not fixing the entire problem. We're just trying to, we were trying to help as best we could in order to understand what the city's issue was fixing Miller Road and its traffic issues.
Are you going to build that extra lane for us on that side?
It is just the dedication at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember, if I could, indirectly, they would be contributing to that extra lane via the fees per the stipulation. So they won't be constructing it, but they will be helping to construct that.
That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilmember Guy, do you have any questions?
I don't have any additional questions. Thank you.
Okay, I see Councilmember Hess with her hand on the trigger, so.
I do. So the density, I know I had asked staff a month or two ago, can you give us similar densities somewhere else in the valley of 56 acres?
Yes, Mayor, Councilmember, the first example that comes to mind, which is actually well exceeding this, is Avondale Boulevard and I-10 on the south side from I-10 to Van Buren. That is probably 90 to 100 acres, but the densities are significantly higher. That's all 3- and 4-story product there.
Is that both sides of Avondale or just the one side?
The west side.
Just the west
Well,
side?
actually, no, it is both sides. The west side is developed more quickly, but there are projects on both sides under construction.
Did you want to add in here?
Mayor, Councilwoman, I have graphics that can try to help explain to answer your question.
Sure.
Let me try to get to those, and it may or may not. It's some examples of where this is real life, real world West Valley kind of. Forgive me, I have an 83-page thing, but I'm going to go through a lot of slides to get to these. These are all my backups in case you had all these questions. A lot of these are your city's multifamily presentation that was done.
For the record, I want to point out that the title of this presentation is Short Presentation.
So we did, and you'd ask, Councilman, you'd ask these questions of us when we met summer of last year and kind of went through this. And we did a couple of analysis, and this graphic, oops, how do I go backwards?
The arrow below it.
Okay, thank you. This is the graphic. Is there a laser pointer on this?
If you, hover and point. Yeah.
All right, so we're all the way down over here somewhere, obviously. So if you take I-10 back to these yellow starred areas here, that's sort of these 4 examples that I've got on these next slides of what I think Ken was trying to describe. This one's on the north side of the I-10, and if you get a little closer to that, we've got 22 acres of 2-story apartments. Similar, we have a 2-story apartment. We have a 3-story apartment. Unfortunately, it's split by a trailer park, but it's 15 acres of 3-story apartments, and then you have your 19 acres of built for rent. So this is an example of almost exactly something that could be built on our property with our 1-story, 2-story, and 3-story proposal, minus the trailer park. And these are just some visuals of what those are and what they look like if you were to try to understand, visually what those are. This is Estrella Parkway, one of the other stars. It kind of shows the lower story, single story on the bottom, 3-story above it, and then there's a 3-story closer to the freeway. This is on Estrella Parkway, just south of the I-10. These are some horrible pictures from Google Maps that I took, and then just kind of shows you what that looks like from a built environment. This is over at Indian School Road and 99th Avenue. Again, 1-story, 2-story, 2-story, and some 3-story developments all along major corridors, which is what our project is, along Miller and Broadway. This is along Indian School and 99th Avenue. And some more Google pictures of what that represents. Then there's this one here. This is, I think, what maybe you were trying to do, Ken. This is Avondale Boulevard, south of I-10. 3 stories. I think where I have 3-story, I think it's 4-story, and where I have 4 stories, 3-story. But you get the point. And then actually this one's interesting because it has an outlot right there, similar to ours. So those are your examples. I just wanted to show you those on a map.
Okay, thank you. I just want the scale to be out there, and then I also want to note that those are all around activity centers that I can see. Across the street, Avondale Sports Complex is an activity center. Estrella is an activity center with Van Buren. I don't see this as an activity center with the amount of density. It is on a major corridor, and I appreciate that, but for as much as going in, it seems like it's compatible or comparable to an activity center and not normal just housing development. So I just wanted to bring that in to do that. To give a little background too, I know you said you had 11 opposed at the P&Z, 9 from some letters. One of the ways that I got involved is I actually went to a completely different project to listen to the community outreach for Nirvana, which was across the street. Almost 40 residents, or maybe more, showed up to that thinking this was Copper Falls. So I know it's kind of hard to note, but there were at least 40 residents thinking that they were coming in here to give feedback and oppose. And so it's a little bit more than just 11 and 9, and some of the people could be the same. And I know it's hard to capture in that, but I do want to just make sure that that was on record as well. So the density, I've got, Kurt, Bill, we've talked. I just have issues with the density. That's just a lot in one area without that supporting activity center. A Fry's does not make an activity center. The zoning transition, I've got a lot of heartburn around We only have a few rural communities actually left that are in our zoning area, in our planning areas. And that transition is just not quite there. It doesn't provide for that lighting we talked about, the sound buffering, and I appreciate that the wall consideration was in there, but if we want to keep people in our acres, that's not how you do it. You don't surround them and kind of push them out by this way. When I asked for, in the first meeting, I'm all for diversification in housing, 100%. But when I asked if we could put some of that in here, some single families, some condos, some ownership mixed in with rentals, I was told we couldn't because of the water certificate. And I understand where that's coming from, and I think we're getting close with the governor, but that problem doesn't equal my problem. And so I think I would love to see a little bit more mixture of ownership and rental here. And so, and I know I've stated that from the get-go, that it shouldn't just be all rentals to some of the residents' points. It's gonna be the same price or not higher than even just owning. So I'd love to see some ownership involved in here. So I don't like that we're kind of trying to get away from the water, just trying to solve a problem today, because we have to live here for a long time, and we're trying to steward something for a really long time that goes beyond us. Traffic, I know we've identified as we've gone through this process that we've got some problems. And so I don't know that I have answers today, even from staff, how that actually gets fixed. I know part of it could be a geo bond, some of it's these newer fees, but we don't really have a timeline or anything, do we? I mean, this is kind of newer information. So I don't want to make a decision in favor of something where I'm creating a problem I don't have an answer to. So I don't know that I like that either. And really, at the end of the day, I bought in that area. We bought in that area thinking we were sitting next to planned community. I feel like we've given a lot of thought process to the downtown specific area plan. We had how months of meetings? 8 months?
Yeah, probably more than that, yeah.
10 months, 9 months of community involvement to say what we wanted in downtown. We had over 200 people usually at each meeting giving feedback, giving input onto what downtown should look like. We're doing the same thing with the landing. We're doing the same thing with the airport. And yet I feel like Miller is just flipping into whatever is the newest trend. And I know we've got some constraints with zoning that's already out there. You know, Funko and Five Below already had zoning to build what they built. We didn't have really a say on the zoning portion or what they could put. All we had input was design. So I feel like we aren't getting the same forethought in Miller Road in planning for those of us that live there, including myself. And so I don't want to just throw something on paper, and I want us to just have some forethought into what's left of Miller Road that we can plan, that already doesn't have zoning. So that's just my concern and my thoughts, my ramblings of just, and again, these aren't a surprise to anybody that's talked to me. Yeah, I just don't think this is the right place, and this much of it in one place for Miller Road at this place. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilmember. I think I've just got three. I really appreciate the going back through the public comment and the participation and the changes that have been made because of the public input on this. And it's a long process, and each one of those meetings has had some change that it has made to the project, whether it's lowering the density, it's buffering, it's additional area for commercial, which just to answer one of the couple of others that I think it came up in the public comment, that the jobs that the residents of these places will fill are not necessarily the jobs that are on the commercial corner. That will most likely be some sort of scaled up retail, I think, is the plan. Is that Am I correct in that, Ken?
Yeah, Mayor, when staff talks about the number of jobs coming to our community, the service jobs are, I guess, part of that, but that's not primarily what we're thinking of. We're thinking of all of the logistics, distribution, manufacturing jobs that are currently en route, starting with Core and Rearig, Pacific, and some of the other Ross, Dress for Less warehouse. So there is a lot of high quality jobs that are coming to the area that certainly, my belief, can help somebody afford a rent.
Okay.
Or purchase.
Can you also speak to, it's not just Miller Road that we're seeing this multifamily coming in. I think there was a reference made to Verrado, but so north of I-10, and then maybe speak a little bit to what's happening south of I-10 in the landing area and
Mayor,
Watson and downtown.
I'm actually glad you asked about that. That perked my ears up. So there are 3, if not 4, definitely 3 multifamily projects, separate projects in Verrado. No different than what is proposed here, other than the 50 or so acres might be spaced out a little bit more. It's not just one concentration at one corner, but the same types of products, the single story, and as well as 2 and 3 story types of products. Also in Sienna Hills with the Sparrow project, that's slightly different. That's age restricted, but that's a 4-story building. So we're seeing a lot of demand for multifamily. It feels like a lot of it is centered on Miller, but I think a lot of the reason for that feeling that way is because that's where the property is, or at least that's where development has gotten to. We're seeing it on Verrado Way, also south of I-10. So in the landing area, we have 3 separate multifamily projects currently in various steps of the process, and that doesn't include all of the state land that I'm sure somebody's going to want to do at least some multifamily on that in the future as well. So we're not picking, I hate to use the word picked on, we're not picking out any corridors. It's just the market seems to be right for multifamily in our more developed areas, and that's including the Miller corridor.
And then talk a little bit about the amount of multifamily that we built over the last 20 years and our percentage of multifamily versus overall housing stock and where we rate versus other communities, having that balanced housing stock.
Yeah, so from 2004 to 2022, I don't think we built a single multifamily unit in the city, which is hard to believe. That's like a number you have to double check. Cities throughout the valley are seeing a lot of multifamily. It's not just Buckeye. I mean, the examples that Kurt showed in his presentation, 2 were from Avondale, 1 was from Goodyear, 1 was from Phoenix. But certainly, if you could probably drive up on the 101 and Surprise and Peoria, all the same. They're all getting the same types of products. We try to do it better than they do, but the concepts are the same. We've picked up our activity over the last 3 years. I don't think that makes up necessarily for almost 20 years of inactivity, so the kind of water's trying to reach its level a little bit.
Do you remember the percentage of multifamily versus single family?
In Buckeye? It's quite low, but Brian might remember.
Mayor, Council, Brian Craig, Development Services Director. The last time we spoke about this at a workshop, we hovered somewhere just above the single digits in 10, 11%. And we're trending towards, if everything built out at the pace we're building out now, maybe we'll tick up closer to 15% multifamily share of overall housing in our community, which is in line with the 12 to 18 to 20% that's seen in the rest of the valley.
Okay, appreciate that. And Chief Sanders, can I force you to come up here for a minute? I know you're excited to come up and talk about crime. Specifically, there were a couple instances that were talked about, and for those folks that are bringing up crime, specific things that are happening that need to be reported to police, if you could catch one of our officers or Chief Sanders afterwards, he would be happy to talk about that. So if you would,
Yes, Mayor.
crime and as it relates to multifamily housing.
Studies we've seen and what we expect in the city of Buckeye is it takes on the neighborhood itself. So the crime rates, they stay consistent with the people who move into the communities. We don't expect any type of influx or something that we can't handle for staffing wise.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Okay, any other questions from council? Then council, what is your pleasure on item 5B?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to make a motion that we approve agenda item 5B as in boy.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second for approval of item 5B. And can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Yonker abstained due to a conflict of interest. Councilmember Hagestad is absent. Councilmember Hess.
No.
Councilmember Guy. Councilmember Guy.
Just thinking it over.
I show that she is online.
I'm sorry, anyway, aye.
Councilmember Eustis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Goodman.
Aye.
Mayor Orsborn.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate the lively discussion. All right, we'll move on to item number 6, comments from mayor and council. Are there any comments from the mayor and council tonight? I'm hearing none. Item number 7, city manager's report and summary of current events. City manager.
Thanks, Mayor. 2 items tonight. First is on July 4th from noon to 5 p.m., the Buckeye Aquatic Center is hosting an Independence Day patriotic pool party, and military personnel can enjoy 4 free entries by showing their ID. And then lastly, the city is hosting an Independence Day celebration on July 4th from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Buckeye Airport. It's a tailgate-style event with food, live music, and fireworks show starting at 8:30 p.m. This concludes my report.
Great, thank you, sir. Item number 8, proposal for future agenda items. Any from council? I'm seeing none. 9 is adjournment. We are adjourned. Thank you.